Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and for each of you making some time today to join me. I'm very excited to have a conversation. And, today's really just going to be about learning from each other, learning about our experiences in tech. We also have one more person who will be joining us, who's actually fighting a little bit of a production issue at the moment, which is very fitting, very much a story about being in tech. And I would just quickly like to, do some introductions and go around the table, and then we can get into some of the questions that we all have lined up that'll allow us to kind of share our stories and our experiences. So I'll just start off by saying I'm Camille Schroeder-Henry. I've been with 8flight now for about 10 months. And in my role in talent acquisition, I bring my technical expertise to the table to help recruit talent. And so I've been in the tech industry in recruitment now for over 15 years, which is kind of shocking every time that I say it, but it's been exciting. I've been in different industries, been in banking, product companies, SaaS organizations, as well as telecom companies. So it's really exciting to work for such a wonderful company that also has a variety of expertise. So very interested today to learn from each of you that has a wealth of knowledge and experience as well. So if it's okay, what I'd love to do is actually pass it over to Kate, just for a quick introduction on your background and experience.
Yeah, awesome. I'm Kate Hamilton. I'm the VP of Growth Marketing at 8flight. I've been here 7 months, trying to do fast math. And I've been in marketing tech for, it's now 12 years. And before that, I was in the journalism industry. So in my marketing world, I actually got into social marketing. So that's a little bit minor tech platforms, did a lot of marketing based initiatives that are all digital, and then moved into recruitment marketing. So I worked for a SaaS platform for a number of years, and that was a bit more of a crash course of what we would probably associate to more tech. And then have just kind of continued in my marketing technology world. At 8flight, I bring probably a technical and strategic perspective to what we're trying to accomplish, and bringing a more data and analytical approach and thinking in how we go to market with all of the messaging that we want to do. So that's a little bit about me.
Love it, Kate. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you're here. Next, I'm going to pick spontaneously. Let's pass it over to Manju.
Thanks, Camille. My name is Manju Thomas. I'm a crafter at 8flight. I've been a crafter here for about 1.5 years now. Before 8flight, I had many careers spanning across healthcare and consulting, government, and I would say that technology cut across all of them. So I'm happy to finally have technology as my primary focus right now. That's all from me, Camille.
Wonderful, Manju, and thank you so much again for being here. Appreciate it. And lastly, but definitely not least, we're going to pass it over to Amanda to just do a quick introduction.
Hey, I'm Amanda Graham. I have been in technology and software for more than 20 years, which makes me sound old, but I guess I am. I've been writing code for probably 30 years, working as a technology consultant for most of my career. I've worked at Fortune 500 companies. I've worked at startups. I ran a startup for a while. I love everything about software. I've played basically every position within a software development team and at software development organizations, from writing code to QA, to running project management, to being a CTO and a CIO. And so I guess that's just a really long-winded way of saying I'm old and I like code.
Definitely not the former or the latter. You're not old. You definitely have a lot of experience. And I feel like all of us actually collectively think about the wealth of experience we bring from the different perspectives that we've had in the industry. And I just think that is like so amazing to encapsulate in one meeting for people. And we're just like a fraction of the people at A Flight, just all the different things that we've seen. And so that's why I'm actually so excited to have this conversation with you all today, because I'm so interested in like piecing our stories together. Like, do we see any commonalities? Have we had any really stark or different paths? And how did we get past some of those things? So I'm just so excited to uncover that all. And I hope that we can all learn from each other. And so maybe to just start off with a quick question about your journey into tech. And Manju, if it's okay, I would love to actually start with you, because you actually mentioned that you love that now being in tech is a primary focus for you. How did you feel about your journey? Did you feel like you needed to kind of have those stepping stones of quasi-tech, different industries to get into a firmly cemented tech role? In general, just like, what did that journey look like for you to get to where you are today?
So I'll talk about my time at FDA. That's really where I started to get more involved in technology. So at FDA, I managed implementations of technology. So any kind of new systems that FDA would introduce, I would help implement that new technology. And in that role, I worked very closely with developers, and I loved it. Actually, I kept doing their work, right? It's pseudocoding because I don't know how to code, but I would do pseudocoding and work very closely with them. And so that's when I realized, I really want to get more involved in technology. I want to know about the nitty-gritty details. So afterwards, I actually went to a coding boot camp and learned more about coding. And then shortly afterwards joined A Flight. And, I have to say, I love it. I mean, I love that every day I learn something new. I love that the work is analytical, and it never gets stale.
Awesome. Thank you for explaining that. I love how in your experience, you realize that you were indirectly doing something, you're passionate about it, and then you chose to make that investment and dedicated that time in the boot camp to really probably concentrate on those skills so you can, fully ingrain yourself in this type of career path. So I love that it led to this really great outcome of having you here. Nicole, we'd love to introduce you. And so if it's okay, maybe you could do a quick intro to you, your role, and if you don't mind just taking a stab at the question we're looking at right now, which is, what did your entry into tech kind of look like? What was your story in getting into the tech world?
Sure. I'm Nicole. I've been at A Flight for a little bit over 6 years. This is actually my first job in tech, as it is for many people at A Flight, because A Flight is great to give a lot of, new developers a shot. So I was one of them. I had an apprenticeship. It was actually 9 months at the time, which we've sort of condensed them since then, but had a nice long learning period to get into it. I actually started in tech in business school. I was jumping around between different majors in business school, and I eventually landed on information systems management, which there is a little bit of coding that you have to do as part of information systems management, but it's pretty minimal. I had to do one class that involved C#, one class that involved HTML and CSS, and then one capstone class. But I really didn't have a lot of exposure to it. And I wasn't even planning on being a developer even until I finished college, and I was trying to figure out what to do with my degree. And a lot of the advice was that, for IS, a good entry-level job is coding. And I knew that I wasn't at all prepared to get a coding job. So I ended up going to a coding boot camp, which was at the time based in New York, San Francisco, and Chicago. So I ended up moving to Chicago, went through the coding boot camp, and was hired as an apprentice after that. Sorry, was there more to the question?
No, that's perfect. Thank you for that. I even love the variety already from Manju's experience and yours. I love that you kind of just started off directly into tech. And I know that you mentioned information systems and business as a background, but all of it is applicable. So I love the variety of our stories already.
To be fair, I started out I started in college when I was 23. I was in the military prior to then. And so I did have a little bit of history, and I've also done like every single service job you could imagine, every single I've had a lot of jobs. So it was quite a journey for me to get here.
Thank you. I appreciate you mentioning that. I love it. We might hear more of that as we move along. Amanda, over to you next.
I think I have a fairly traditional entry into tech. My dad was in tech. So some kids had TVs in their bedrooms. I had a Commodore 64, a Commodore VIC 120. And I was always on the computer. I was always doing something with it. Took some web dev in high school. It was an independent study. It was just me and one other person. And then I told my mom I wanted to be a veterinarian, and she laughed at me and said, Amanda, what are you thinking? Do something with, you're always on the computer, do something with that. And I didn't even know it was like a job. I thought that I just had a hobby. And then I went to school and got a degree. And my first, actually after my degree, I said, oh, I don't like coding. I'll do anything but that. And then IBM offered me a job in coding and a nice paycheck to go with it. So I sold out immediately and took a coding job. And yeah, then I think pretty traditional path, and kind of came up through ranks from there.
I love it. I love that. You know, I don't want to do coding unless the number looks right. Great.
Coding in college versus coding in the real world are very, very different things. Do not listen to what the college professors tell you. They're not right.
Thank you so much. And Kate, last but over to you.
Yeah, I had a slightly different narrative before Amanda started talking, and now I actually think I need to shift it. So I was gonna say that I've always been really scrappy and curious, and I always take on more. So in my journalism days and working in B2B, there was always that role or that deliverable or that thing that like no one else could do. And they looked at around the room and saw the youngest person in the room and are like, you can do it. But I actually think my story in tech is way earlier than that. And I just it didn't click until Amanda's story. So my dad was really into computers way back in the day. And one could call him a Renaissance man. So he'd like pick up different hobbies and doodle and whatever. So I had a Packard Bell in middle school, and, you know, early on AOL login, and got really kind of into some of that and did some coding classes in summer school, and then hit high school and sort of shifted direction to be more creative, and writing and journalism and communications became a thing. But I think because of that background and my curious nature, when I started working in B2B, they're always looking for the web editor and the person who can work on websites. And then I started going down this rabbit hole of website building. I learned how to sort of build HTML. I would never say I'm really good. So I know I'm amongst like actual technical people who know these languages. I can break a site really well. But I started doing that, and I think that opened a lot of doors in the early years of my B2B career, and being webmaster or web editor or in charge of web redesign projects from the content side, but you have to get involved more and more. And then that started to pique an interest in social, and a real frustration started to brew in the one-way street of traditional journalism and communications, and wanting to break those barriers down. And this was around the time where Twitter was starting to get really influential and big in business before it took a turn and is no longer influential and big in business. But this was that time. So I made a conscious choice to switch careers and move into digital marketing, and got a really great opportunity at a social and content marketing agency. Content, I would say, is probably the thread that unites all of my careers and all of my different jobs. But tech has always been like a little bit in the background as well. And I think that's made it easier for me to make that shift and transition, because I'd been working in websites in some fashion for a long time. So moving to social was easy. And then moving to a recruitment marketing platform-based agency made it enough of an entry point, despite lacking maybe in some other technical background or competencies, they were able to see there's still a real storytelling, strategic, curious mind in that brain. Let's let that run. She can talk to clients, open a lot of doors in that way. It's not the primary, or I would not have predicted that it would have been such a prominent part of my career, but I'm thankful for those opportunities because it's fun to be able to stretch those muscles and connect it to the other things and other skills that I have.
Lovely. Thank you. And since we kind of started off with the, how did we like get here? How did we get started in tech? Maybe the best place to go is, how are you advancing, and what are some of the challenges or obstacles that you each face in respects to your roles? I also heard a lot of talk about like almost like the adjacencies of tech, right? How it relates to different fields. Like we all know tech is broad. It relates to the military, it relates to retail. So in your unique positions of the ones that you hold currently, what does advancement looks like? What are the obstacles or roadblocks, and how do you overcome any of those things? I can kind of change up the order, or if anyone feels compelled, you can definitely speak up. But Amanda, what do you think? Can I start with you?
I think in my current position and in all positions that I've held, advancement can become really difficult when you paint yourself into your role and you become essential. It's really easy to become the go-to person for things, to become the person that, you're good at your job, and you're so good that if they would advance you, if you would get a promotion, then who would do the things that you're doing now? And that I have found many times over has been kind of a problem for not just me, but some of my colleagues as well. So I think how to get around it is to just know how to delegate, know how to share, know how to not be the go-to person, making the whole team the go-to people, right? Sharing success, as opposed to in elementary and high school, and even in college, you're taught that it's like a solo game. You're supposed to go it alone and you're competing with your peers. And then in the real world, becoming a team player and really shining a spotlight on everybody on your team, giving everybody the chance to grow, means that you can yourself grow, move into different roles.
Yeah, I could completely agree with that, Amanda. I think it's like the delegation and also the idea of bringing somebody else along as you're learning, because I think the one thing that maybe we all might feel is that tech advances so quickly, right? It's never static. And so that's a roadblock in and of itself, like the self-education and the upkeep of your knowledge. And then how do we ensure that other people on our teams and that might essentially, replace us or take on some of our roles and responsibilities have the same opportunities to keep learning as well. Nicole, does any of that like resonate with you, or do you have a different perspective on obstacles or hurdles or the way that you've been able to advance in tech?
Yeah, it resonates with me. Actually, I had a really interesting conversation with Amanda at one point, which and one thing really stuck out to me. I was talking about how I was thinking about getting more into like management and into like the business aspects of it, and I was saying how much people were kind of like pushing me to do that because it was something that I had kind of expressed an interest in, because the reason that I expressed an interest in it was because when I first started as a coder, I had like basically zero confidence. Honestly, like I've suffered from this my entire career, like just on the technical side, like the confidence level is just not there. And that led me to think that, hey, maybe my skills would be better served on like the business or people end. Something that Amanda had said to me was that she basically said she didn't like the fact that people were kind of trying to push me into she wanted to make sure that people weren't trying to push me into a business oriented role as a woman in a technical position. And I kind of took that to heart because I absolutely 100% know what she's talking about, where, you know, a lot of women just don't stay in, you know, these technical roles. Either they leave the industry completely, or, you know, they do move into some sort of, you know, managerial people management role. And that's kind of actually led me to fight a little bit against, you know, or I don't want to say fight against. I'm still embracing opportunities to, you know, grow in like a sales capacity, or in, you know, helping with marketing efforts and stuff like that. But I am trying to spend a little bit more time trying to learn more on the technical side, and really building up those skills as well, because I like having the option to do both. I feel like I'm in a kind of particular I have a particular set of skills where I am very community oriented, I'm very connection oriented, and I definitely use those skills at Eighth Light to kind of create my own role here, which anybody who knows me know, I do have a very specific, you know, thing going on at Eighth Light, but I'm also trying to set aside more of that, like Amanda said, you know, delegating a little bit more, not being the go-to person for these efforts, so that way I can put a little bit more time into you know, growing and advancing on a technical level, which, you know, we at Eighth Light are given a block of, you know, we're given a wad of cash and a block of time to, you know, as our learning and development budget. So last year I didn't use it at all. I really just focused on the things that I was doing for the organization, you know, mentoring and managing and helping with hiring, and you know, we have an internal conference and all these other things that are meetups. But this year I'm trying to delegate more. I'm trying to, you know, not say yes to as many organizational things, and say yes to more, you know, personal learning opportunities, so that that can, you know, help me advance more on that side of things.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Nicole. You really helped us tie some themes together, I feel, about, you know, progression and educating and taking other people along and delegating. But also one thing that you mentioned, kind of maybe not using the same language, is this idea of noise, right? People tell you like about a path, an obligation of sorts that you might have, or ideas of where they want you to be. That can kind of create a lot of like commentary or dialogue in your head, maybe that you're not even sure that you want to pursue. And so what does that look like? Is that a theme anybody else feels that they've had to compete or combat with as they've been looking at their own progression? Kate, I don't know if you felt that has affected your growth, or you've thought about that as you've developed in tech.
Definitely can relate. There have been a number of times in my career that I was told in a certain way that I wasn't going to be successful. And interestingly, in different ways, in different contexts, and on both sides of the B2B and the more digital tech side of my career. And in the earlier years, that was harder for me, because you didn't have the base of history and proof of success. And so it would throw me for a loop. But for anyone who knows me, I can be a bit of a bull in a china shop, and I'll just kind of keep driving forward. Even if internally I'm like debating or still like battling whatever that feedback is, you know, like I had someone tell me that I wasn't an analytical thinker, and that I wasn't able to fully understand and interpret data. And I went on to work for a huge company that relied on me as a digital strategist to interpret data and sell their platform. And I did that relatively well. So in some ways, it's those things, whether they're positive or negative, like I wouldn't say, you know, encouraging Nicole to take a managerial path is a discouraging thing either, but it's a choice. It's something that has to feel right and rooted. And sometimes the feedback, while well-intended, even on those positive ways, can not allow you to follow your true source of path. And I've left jobs that were great, but for whatever reason weren't satisfying where I was or where I wanted to go, you know. So for like progression's perspective, for me at my level, it's not necessarily like technical expertise or depth of technical expertise now. Not to say that I wouldn't want to keep digging into learning platforms and learning like MarTech is a whole other like little world in its own right. But I think where progression ends up being a little more of a nuanced dance is you're really letting passion drive you forward in decisions, deciding that you're hitting a wall, and whatever that wall is, and making a choice to open up and open yourself up to new opportunities. And I've been blessed in having those opportunities, and I guess maybe some internal trigger is letting me know or alerting me that a change is necessary. I do have a little bit of intuition, and so leaning into that gut sort of reaction, or what I'm kind of like something saying, oh, maybe this isn't right anymore, has benefited me. And I think listening to that can help regardless of where you want to go. The progression, always leaning into your gut, I think will lead you where you should go if you can listen to those things.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Some intuition and a gut check is important. Manju, what are your thoughts on career progression? What does it look like for you? And do any of these themes kind of appear or come up in your story?
Yeah, I mean, before I came to A5, I always thought of career progression as, like managing more people, right? As you get kind of higher up in the organization, you have more people to manage. And that truthfully is why I left, FDA and my previous careers. Is really, I didn't want to manage people, but I rather wanted to grow in terms of learning. So that since I became a coder, that's really my focus, is to try to be the best coder that I can be, right? Incorporate the best practices, deliver on features, be able to build something and build it really well, right? Make it and have it work really well. So I have to say that, for me now, it's more about working with people, learning from others, growing with them, mentorship, for example. I've had some really great mentors, and I've learned so much from them. And to me, that's growing. I'm really not focused on positions or roles. It's really more about, can I do something and can I do it well, in terms of coding.
I love
Yeah,
that.
and I think that's why I love my career so much now, right? Because I don't have to worry about all these other things. Yeah.
I like that a lot. I feel like it's that ownership. It's like Kate was mentioning, it's the intuition. Your intuition telling you that growth for you and progression looks like deepening that knowledge, making sure you're happy and you're getting the opportunities that excite you. And as you mentioned, learning from others. So actually, I think that's a great way to piggyback off of where you brought us into, which is mentorship. It seems like it was important to have people help you along the way. And as you grew and developed and deepened those skills, what did mentorship look like to you? What does it mean to you? What is a strong mentor that you could speak of that's really helped assist you?
Is that me, Camille? Still on me, or okay? I'll talk about my apprenticeship at A-Fight. I came into A-Fight as an apprentice. I was never an apprentice before, but I would have to say I had the best experience, and I would still be an apprentice now if I could be, but I suppose we have to move on. And so I have moved on, but I had a very good mentor. He spent a lot of his time with me, pairing with me, going through code, going through best practices. He really devoted a lot of his day to my growth, which meant a lot, right? Which made me want to work even harder to make sure that I absorbed everything he offered. Yeah, I think that it's invaluable to be supported by someone, right? For them to share their knowledge with you, and to share resources with you. It's very hard to have someone not be selfish, right? So they're not thinking of themselves; they're really thinking about you. So yeah, I learned so much during that apprenticeship. And I have actually applied a lot of what I've learned to my client project now as well.
I love it. Thank you. You're right. It's instrumental. These are like gateways, right? It's like people knowingly or unknowingly just opening up doors and opportunities by just sharing what they know. And I think maybe even tying it into what Nicole was mentioning, helping you build that confidence, right? Because they're giving a piece of themselves to you and your training and your growth. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing, Manju. Nicole, maybe we can get your thoughts on mentorship or people who helped you along the way.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I have had a lot of opportunities to have like a structured sort of mentor role, in my life. And I don't think that that's necessarily the thing that has stuck with me. And I don't know why. Like I've worked with some brilliant people, brilliant women. And I do, I do one-on-ones with, our CEO and like other leaders in the company. And I always find that like, very insightful. But as far as like having like a structured mentor, I don't consider it like that. I have a lot of people that I go to for different things. And, so like, I still consider them mentors. They're just like on a smaller level. Like for instance, I talked to our CEO, Jenny, a lot. Well, I say a lot. I talked to her a couple times a quarter, just to kind of get some insight into like how the business runs and, decisions that we make that, we don't necessarily have a peek behind the curtain unless you kind of go in and ask, and I'll talk to Carmen sometimes about, people things. I'll talk to Stacy when I, need advice on, something that comes up in managing, and I'll talk to, I do have a lot of really, really intelligent, like experienced people that work at this company that, even on the technical side, like there's certain people that like, if I have a JavaScript problem, I'll go to this one person. If I have a Ruby problem, I'll go to this one person. So I never felt like I've not had support. I like I said, I have had opportunities. I've literally had people assign a mentor to me, and it's just never stuck. That's never just kind of been the way that I feel like I need support moving through the world. So I have had mentorship, but yeah, the way that I embrace it, I think is a little bit different, or a little less formal, I should say.
No, I like that. What I'm hearing is that mentorship could look like a lot of different things, takes on different forms, and to the extent that it sticks with you, really is predicated by maybe the person, but also what works for how you need to take in information. And if you have a lot of different like specialties or subject matter areas that you need different focus on, it might be helpful to have a lot of smaller, maybe less formal mentors to help assist you. The one thing I think, and let me know your thoughts, we'll go to you, Amanda, next, is it sounds like in tech you're going to need to lean on people along the way. That's a given. What are your thoughts on either mentorship or just people supporting your growth?
Yeah, I 100% agree with everything Nicole said. The having a mentor assigned has often just felt weird, but lots of companies do it. And often when you're new to a company, it's great because it helps you to find your way. But I remember one company assigned me a mentor, but I had found externally in the business world a person that I considered a mentor. I never asked them to be my mentor. They never told me they were going to be my mentor, but we talked regularly. We had great conversations. And I was talking to him about some of the things that I was doing with my work mentor. And I remember at one point he looked at me and he said, that person is going to take credit for the work that you're doing. And I have no idea how he knew. And it felt very like, why would you even give me that information? Why would you tell me that? He's like, mark my words, that person's trying to take credit for what you're doing. This is going to be a lesson learned for you. And he was very right. And I learned at that point, this person has no reason to help me. He has no reason to give me that advice. He just genuinely wanted to see my career go in a good direction. So I to this day, I'm very grateful for that person, and I have kept them as a mentor. I don't know that we've ever used the word mentor, but I'm always, wanting to have the conversations and depend on him I count on him for his advice, and knowing that he's just being very genuine and always going to give me the truth. But, that's one style of mentor. Really, there's so many different people within my career that I can talk to, from different positions that I've held. So many people at Eighth Light I consider mentors. They don't know that. They might find that weird, but I definitely get value in just being able to have conversations with them. People who have more experience than me and a whole lot of people who have less experience than me are able to give me advice and guidance that they probably don't realize the impacts that they have when they're just having a conversation. But it's incredibly important to have people that you can depend on and know you can go to and trust.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. You kind of brought out a theme, which I love, because of course at Eighth Light, many of us are afforded that opportunity of getting and garnering a mentor that's, through the introduction or your onboarding sort of assigned to you. But it's nice to know that in many cases too, it could be self-propelled, right? You could find that person in your own network. And to your point, Amanda, it doesn't need to be formalized like, hey, would you like to be my mentor? It could just kind of be something that organically grows. And again, if they're supporting that growth in your journey and can lend you some key advice, then they're doing their part in their job, quote unquote, whether they know it or not, right? They're helping you in your development and your exposure and experience. Kate, what are your thoughts? What did your advancement and support from others look like?
Yeah, it's interesting hearing you all share your stories, and I don't really think I've ever benefited from a traditional mentor. Marketing we don't have that. It's a lot more cutthroat. Swim, little fishy, see if you can figure it out. So in hearing all of your stories, I was trying to kind of think about where mentorship would land for me. And I actually think I've served as, probably not defined this way, but as a mentor in a number of different ways and roles. And there's certainly those who have been under that structure with me, I guess, have occasionally claimed that I've helped them, which is helpful to hear. But I think I've learned more from them as well, in a symbiotic relationship. I've loved teaching and training ever since I've moved into digital marketing. It was somewhat of one of the first things I did. Weirdly, I don't know why anybody would have me train a year into social, but hey, let's do the thing. But I actually really gravitated towards it and really love it. And so training and teaching and then learning new perspectives or learning about myself in that process has been really beneficial. And then certainly there's the plus side of reaping the benefits of maybe helping someone achieve their goals. And I've really seen that in a couple of professional positions, people going off and reaching the heights. But in my side organization, I've seen it too, working with a bunch of people trying to do career changes and giving them opportunities to take advantage of that. And then going out there and living that dream, and they come back and the experience and opportunities through you were instrumental and foundational in that stepping stone. And that feels really good, because you can also then retrospectively look back at what you learned in that transaction with that person. And so it doesn't feel like it's just this one-way street. I think there's a lot of benefits to the other side of it that sometimes I don't think mentors give themselves enough credit for, or acknowledge that benefit. That I love that Eighth Light seems to have a lot more of that perspective on both sides. It's beneficial, but in other industries, I'm not sure that it's viewed as symbiotic or opportunity to have that feedback loop on both sides.
Great. No, thank you for that. Actually, and as you were talking about, learning from others and even those that were probably learning from you along the way, it made me think about hurdles. And also you mentioned too, Kate, that at times in marketing and in MarTech, people have said to you hey, this is not a competency that you have, you won't be able to get there, but then you've overcome that. Thinking about tech specifically, right? Do you feel each of you in your own journeys, your own perspective, your own unique views have had hesitations on your own about where you can go? Do you feel that continues to be something that maybe you feel the industry puts on you, like clamps, barriers, boundaries as to where you can go? Or maybe do you feel like tech is this all-encompassing thing and the boundaries are endless and you're actually excited about it? Just very interested to hear all of your perspectives and thoughts on that. Maybe we'll start first with you, Amanda.
I feel like this, if you ask me this question on a different day, I'll have different answers. It's like you go through these moments of feeling like I've definitely gone through moments of feeling like people put me in a box and have expectations on what I can and cannot do. And I've had those moments like, why am I in this industry? This is all guys who don't want me in the industry and don't think I can do it. And I'm always having to prove myself. And then there are other days where I feel badass, like I'm going to take over the world and there's nobody that's going to stop me. And it, you know, there's a spectrum any given day. I don't feel like there are hard boundaries on, you know, the limits to what I can do. But I do feel like, you know, people do make judgments based on what they see. And sometimes those are unfair. And I went into my career definitely feeling like I had to prove myself. And it probably came off as I was a little harder than I actually am. And so I had my own boundaries that I put up that, you know, and growing up a little bit, I've taken them down because I realized that a lot of that, it wasn't the industry judging me, it was me judging how the industry was judging me. So I feel like some of it I've maybe put on myself and I've, you know, grown out of, but some of it is still actually real. And so I do find myself, you know, thinking, do I have to prove myself in this conversation? But no, I am very excited. I think that there's nowhere that I can't go. I think there's nowhere any of us can't go. So I'd have to say today I'm feeling pretty badass.
Deservingly. Yes, I would agree. And Kate, I was seeing some serious head nods from you. So what are your thoughts on what Amanda just mentioned?
Oh yeah, that imposter syndrome is it's a dangerous game. Although in some weird ways, I am always thankful a little bit for that imposter syndrome. I don't come up from a normal tech background. So like limitations for me are probably a little bit more than the rest of you. That's just not my background. And I'm in a little bit of a different slant of field, but I don't know. And weirdly, like when I start feeling imposter syndrome, I'll get down for a second. I'll be like doubting. I'm like, I got to deal with that. And you know, you feel like you have to scream louder. And then somehow, somewhere along the line, the narrative flips in my head, and I'm like, nope, I'm actually pretty awesome. And I can't do everything, and I know that. And I think that also having some understanding of what your limitations are is helpful. But I don't know. I just kind of like I'll flip the narrative at some point. It may take me a second. Like I'm really. Similarly, the boundaries that Amanda was talking about, I also had that. It took a long time and a couple of more recent roles for me to feel comfortable to be more vulnerable with people I'm managing, more vulnerable with the teams that I'm working with, being able to share some of those maybe insecurities and feeling supported by others. And like that in my past career of B2B journalism, no. You don't say that ever. And then some of those like more marketing agencies, you also don't say that because it puts a target on your back, or at least in those cultures, it can feel like you're putting a target on your back. And I feel so much better to be on this side of all of that and more comfortable in being vulnerable and more leaning into that imposter or that insecurity and being like, okay, let's explore, but then find a way to get around it. So that was why I was nodding a lot, because I feel, I don't know, in my aged maturity as well, that like, I don't know, I got past or beyond whatever those limitations are, both externally dictated and internally enforced. I have no idea if I answered that question, but those are the thoughts going through my head at the time.
Yeah, I love it. We all have different ways of working through it. I'm sure it's something that we're all continuously battling with. Manju, what are your thoughts? Any hesitations about what growth looks like, or do you feel like there are limitless opportunities in tech?
Yeah, I think there are limitless opportunities, Camille. You know, I never think about, I don't know, I never think that I'm special or there's anything special about me, right? So I just go into a situation and just do the work and just focus on the work. But I have to say, I've noticed that sometimes I am the only female in the room, especially in tech. And it really, it hasn't bothered me. You know, I just do the work. But I did have, you know, I do put feedback on PRs, for example. And I did get a comment from a developer saying that he wasn't used to taking feedback from a female, which, you know, I mean, which is not something I expected, right? But I will say that, you know, what he said was useful feedback, right? It's not necessarily that my feedback didn't reflect that I was a female, for example, but it did reflect that maybe I should improve the way I gave feedback, right? Maybe it was something about the way I gave feedback, not that I was a female, right? He's not used to working with many females. So he assumed it was because I was a female, but it's not. It's because of who I am, right? Not because I'm a female. So it is, I mean, I think there are limitless opportunities here. Although, you know, sometimes it is interesting to be the only female in a developer team. You will sometimes get some interesting comments.
You know, I thank you for highlighting that. And I think it's fair. Like, we all have these unique perspectives, and the truth of the matter from where you sit is that you're not the commonality. You're not part of the majority in that respect. And so I would like to just say that if I were you, you're much kinder than me. I would have said, get used to it. But I hear and appreciate exactly what you're saying. And yeah, I hope that, to your point, those opportunities are limitless. And that means that as time progresses, there's less and less of that you hear and have to deal with, and more opportunities to continue to grow and bring what is actually, you are very special. And we hear that feedback a lot. And so I know you don't think about yourself modestly maybe in that way, but others do.
I do have some follow-up feedback for that. So I did change the way I gave feedback, and it improved the situation tremendously. So, you know, it really wasn't because of me as a female, it was really because of the way I was giving feedback. So it was, in a sense, valuable feedback from that person.
You're great. You're so good. Much better than I. Nicole, what are your thoughts?
Oh man, so we talk about hesitations, right? I am a like walking ball of insecurities, but it's all internal. Like, I've never felt pressure from the outside that like I couldn't do something. Actually, to be honest, I don't excuse me, I don't feel pressure from the inside saying I can't like advance. I have this thing in my brain where I will not allow myself to fail, or I'll keep going until I succeed, right? And tech was one of those things. Like, the first, I don't know, I've been doing this for a little over 6 years. The first 5.5 years, no, the first 6 years, I have never felt like I was good enough. And that's like a completely internally driven, like, imposter syndrome, sure. But it's just like, I have any barrier that I've felt I've had, my own mental has put in front of me. But I have this thing in life where I always have to be doing incrementally better, right? I started working when I was 14 at like minimum wage at McDonald's, you know, and every single job that I've had since then has been like slightly better, even if it's just like, you know, now working at Taco Bell, you know, like something like slightly incremental. No hate on McDonald's or Taco Bell. They were good jobs for a 14-year-old, right? But and that's how I feel in tech. Like, I always feel like, you know, every year that I'm here, every year that I'm a developer, I am learning a little bit more, even if I still don't feel like I can hang with the big guys or the big cats or whatever. I shouldn't have used big guys, the big cats. Even if I feel like I can't I can't hang, I always try to give myself a little bit of grace, saying like, you are learning, you are growing as a person and as a developer. And and I also, despite how insecure and how like much internally I sometimes don't feel like I can do it, I have so many people at this company and my friends that are developers that are like, Nicole, you're a badass. Like constantly, people are constantly telling me I'm a badass. And it's like, I don't know, am I allowed to curse? I just, people are constantly like from the outside looking at me and being like, no, Nicole, like you really are like good, and like validating me constantly. Like I don't validate myself. I'm not as nice to me as everybody else is to me. So in that way, no, I don't feel like I have outside pressure telling me I can't do it. I have the exact opposite. I have, like my bar for myself is so low that no, but that's not true. But like, yeah, I feel a lot of support in my career, and I have the entire time I've been here. The entire time I've been in tech, I've felt like people see something in me that I don't even see in myself. So in that sense, I'm not sensitive to a lot of negative things that probably are going on around me, but I just, I'm so in my head about a lot of things that I just don't, if somebody is trying to put a barrier in front of me, I don't notice it because I've put my own higher barrier in front of me, myself. So
I love it.
that's kind of my answer to that.
I love it. I'm learning so much from y'all. I really enjoyed this conversation. I do have one more question, and I'm inspired to share my own thoughts based on everything that I've actually learned from you each today, which is kind of like advice I would have wanted to share with my younger self, or even like advice I would want to share if I had like a good friend who wanted to get into tech and was looking to make that leap. What would I share with them? And I think what I've learned from you all today is that I would share that you're bound to feel pressures. You're going to hear noise and you're going to feel insecurities. And you might be your own limitation in your own framework and your thoughts on a particular day. It could be a bad day, but where you can go and what you can do in tech. But I would encourage that person to work through it, because there is a really good pathway on the other side, and that those days and the strategies and how you learn to work through that will make you only stronger and better and further where you could go. And I think barriers exist in every industry. I think there are some great ones and compelling ones that Manju spoke to earlier, just around, whether it's a minority or being a female in tech, that are just more, I guess, pressing or stand out more. But I would say fight through those. We need you in tech, and just stick the course. Kate, any thoughts on what you would tell your younger self or someone looking to enter into tech?
I would tell my younger self, listen more to your gut. You are probably 5, if not 10 steps ahead of everyone else, and to take risks a little bit more.
Manju, what about you?
I wish I had gotten into tech 20 years earlier. But definitely, I think put yourself out there, have confidence, take risks.
Love it. Great advice. What about you, Nicole?
I would say, figure out what you enjoy doing and how you enjoy spending your time, and focus your time there. There's going to be a lot of people asking a lot of things of you. Make sure that if you decide to go in those directions, it's something that you feel is a valuable use of your own time.
Love it. Amanda?
I'd say it's all about problem solving. Define what the problem is that you're trying to solve, break it down into something that is actually solvable pieces, and then solve one problem at a time, and then just keep going.
Love it. Well, this has been so good. Thank you all for joining and sharing your thoughts. I literally enjoyed learning more about you all. And I don't think if there was a forum like this, we could really have the opportunity to peel back and talk about some of these things. So Thank you all for joining.